Morning, everyone. Welcome to Joe. Round of applause. Joe flew in just today for us.
Thank you. These chairs are incredibly soft. I feel like I'm going to fall through the floor. This is great.
They're very comfortable. Thank you so much. All right. I wanted to kick off. We're talking to Joe about video production and what his company, Mountain and QuickFrame, do. But I wanted to kick off with a little bit of a video reel of some of the work just to give context to our conversation. And here we go. All right, so QuickFrame. So we've talked a lot about video already in the conference. You know, obviously we just talked about TikTok and Instagram, which are all video now. Ted from Twitter yesterday talked a lot about video production for Twitter and what's working there. Tell me, you know, where does QuickFrame fit into this narrative with so many brands having to produce a lot more video content than we ever had to do before? Like, why, and you know, what's the problem that QuickFrame is solving that's relevant?
So the issue that we were observing, I think that we collectively observe as an industry, is that with device proliferation and platform proliferation and audience proliferation, that same hero asset that was cut down 18 ways from Sunday and used to distribute all of these different places, it was creating a lot of issues, right? One is it took entirely too long to create, right? So there's this whole concepting phase that we all know that takes a long time, and the creative folks sitting around the conference room table at midnight eating Chinese food. And then there's this accelerated fatigue when you really overuse a creative asset, as we all know. Again, as you start to look at retention, asset productivity, that same one single purpose kind of creative being used over and over again really accelerates its fatigue. So QuickFrame as an idea came forward thinking, well, is there a way at least to kind of service the higher velocity marketing needs, specific, creative marketing needs, originally kind of oriented around video, about, well, how can we start delivering video faster, at a faster rate for mostly performance marketers in the beginning, and getting them assets that they can cycle through faster and faster and iterate and build and understand. Because the other fallacy in a lot of the marketing strategy is that the same asset will work on Twitter and will work on Facebook and will work on Snap, right? And what we realize now is those audiences are largely, they're separate but equal, right? And so we're trying to help companies kind of build faster and more agile creative. So the premise is more or less just for the takeaway talk track, is it's the Airbnb for video production, right? How do we bring a group of production companies together and create demand channels for them back to big CPG brands, but also kind of mid-market D2Cs and so on and so forth. But the premise being, by unlocking a big creative network, you can get access to more ideation, you can get access to faster throughput, you can get access to different types of styles, and meet that need of kind of high content velocity.
Yeah, so you've created this marketplace of video production resources, agencies, creator places, and how many kind of creators are you working with today?
Right now, the number I think is just under 3,000.
Yeah.
So we've gotten real density, and that's globally distributed. Because the other thing you start to realize, one of the shortcomings of the creative process, right, is if you want to capture kind of a specific voice or style, you really have to do it in the place that it's happening, right? So bringing in actors to represent underrepresented groups and things like that, it often doesn't work. It comes off as disingenuous, and you start to see a lot of the creative performance fall as a result of that. So by unlocking this creator network, what we call a global video hub, which has a couple of points we can talk about, but it allows our companies, the demand side of the platform, to get to the creative side of the platform in the places where they really need to see it operationalized, whether it's in the UK or somewhere in it can go anywhere, Asia, et cetera.
Yeah. So you're filtering all these creators, these video production companies, and how are you filtering for that? Are you going out and recruiting video teams to produce content? How are you weighing, is this agency good enough? Is this team good enough to really produce for some of the brands that operate on QuickFrame?
It's a great question. One of the things we want to be really careful about is that we're not kind of bringing our own subjectivity into the value of the quality of the performance of said agency. So essentially what happens is we have a recruiting team. A lot of our creator network is born from referral, right? So because post-production company might work with, live action production company, and they will come in together or refer one another. So a big part of the growth of the supply side for us is in referral. But the other way we actively go out and recruit and look for what people are doing in the marketplace. Good news is, good source for us are the trades. So we have a outreach team that will reach out to different production companies and say, hey, listen, we saw what you were doing here. And then we just have a vetting process, so we have a more or less kind of a style guide. So when a production company comes in, what are the things you are good at? When they tell us what they're good at, they provide some examples of what they do. We catalog those examples, and then when we make them available for the demand side.
And then, a lot of people in the room today, you're creating content on a regular basis, social media, even community managers, marketing teams are just having to produce a lot more video content than ever before. And it's also changing at a rapid pace. Like, nobody was producing the style of videos that TikTok has today a year or two ago. So what are the skills that are kind of needed there today that you're looking for from these creators, and that a lot of people in the room are probably wondering, what am I going to have to start creating next year down the road?
Yeah. The good news about this too, right, is, and I'm a data nerd through and through. I am not a creative. I've learned a lot about the creative process since joining QuickFrame. But the reality is, it gets you closer to the bleeding edge, right? Because we're getting more, 3D animation requests. We're certainly getting more AR, VR requests. The UGC is always this kind of the kind of devil in the details type of thing, which is, do you want it to look a little more patinaed and kind of hand shot, or do you want it to look a little bit more polished and high production quality? There's like all of this nuance out there in terms of what different marketers are asking for, and I like being on the kind of vanguard of what they're looking for, because a lot of these production companies are dragging us in that direction, anticipating that. So we're seeing more and more of that, and even 2D animation actually is in high demand right now. And then traditional animation, stop motion, those types of things continue to be a real request in terms of what companies are coming to us to help solve. And then there's always the post-production work, right? Post-production, seemingly commoditized service, but it isn't just fantastic demand as you think about so many of you in the audience, I'm sure, and so many of your customers. The great thing about post-production is it can unlock kind of, essentially creative assets that have been put away on the shelf and maybe can be reinvigorated and be reused. And one of the ways, just to answer your question a little more succinctly, we start to anticipate what's around the corner. Most of our customers want to shoot both horizontally and vertically, just to prepare for some of the different kind of aspect ratios that we're seeing with the new content.
Okay, so to switch things up a little bit, your company, you are the chief operating officer of Mountain, which acquired QuickFrame, and Ryan Reynolds is the chief creative officer of your company. Of aviation gin fame and other things.
Is that what he's famous for? Yeah.
Many things. So I'm just curious, do you work directly under? Does he tell you what to do every day? Does he stop by once a month to deliver gin? Like, what's that?
Yeah, I love the question. I mean, the reality is, any of us in a service business know that the people who tell me what to do are largely our customers. But he is a meaningful presence in the business, and right now he's in Cannes, as one does. Kind of waxing philosophical about all things creative, but what's interesting is Ryan comes with an agency called Maximum Effort that Mountain acquired shortly before they acquired QuickFrame, and what I really love about their business is they're just master storytellers, and
yeah,
I mean, it's one of those skills that you don't really appreciate until you see it, and you're like, oh my God, I get it. Like the way they positioned aviation was wonderful, but if you look at any of his Mint stuff, it's great. And then all of the stuff that he's doing for Mountain and QuickFrame about trying to articulate what performance television really should be and could be, which is where his real interest lies in the business, is how can we bring television advertising in a democratized fashion to much smaller businesses who traditionally have not had the capital
assets to get into that space.
Yeah, I mean, for people that aren't familiar with the companies involved here, Maximum Effort, I think a lot of people know of. They've seen the Peloton ad they did so quickly, and just they produce these amazing and funny, snarky TV spots very, very quickly, and that aligns with Mountain, Mountain essentially allows you to buy TV commercial spots the same way you would buy a Facebook ad, right? And then combining with QuickFrame as the creative sourcing, it just fits really well together. I'm curious, you've got a lot of access to this data. Where are you seeing budgets shift? Obviously through the pandemic there were some changes, but looking out 1 to 2 years, are you seeing increased investment in social? Are you seeing investment overall in great creative going up? What's that look like on those financial trends?
It's a really interesting question. One of the things I really like about where the trend, the pandemic was such an unusual time for marketers that I'm not really sure how to treat the trend analysis over maybe the last 18 or 24 months. But what's abundantly clear, right, is that CTV and OTT spending is skyrocketing. And
that's over the air. That's like Hulu TV spots, over the air, easy.
That's right, connected TV, right? Yeah. And so kind of the cord cutters of the world. And what that is largely is a repurposing of a formerly linear budget. So linear television advertising, that spend seems to be going down. There's a positive correlation to that with this kind of connected TV world going up. And as a result of that, what's becoming more and more, at least pertinent and germane to me, is it's this conflict that's happening now between brand and performance advertising, right? And so what's fascinating about linear TV, as we all know, is the linear television measurement world was controlled largely by one party that we shouldn't talk about. But in the connected TV world, you have much more kind of available response data, just like you would in a social environment. And I think that's unlocking is this shift, large kind of organic paradigm shift to performance marketing writ large, and as a result of that, there's going to be spillover into increases in social spending. There's going to be increases in all of the places where advertising and more specifically return on ad spend is going to be much more palpable and visible, because now we can start really effectively measuring what advertising is working and what isn't.
Yeah, it seems like the demise of traditional TV advertising and the switch over to connected devices is really allowing teams to merge the connected device world with the social world, and that's mainly in the ad front, not necessarily organic social, which brings me to a question about that. So a lot of folks in here are in charge of organic social in one way or another. What advice do you have for those teams that are having to produce, again, more and more video content for organic social, TikTok, Instagram, et cetera?
It's going to be an unpopular answer because I'm not sure everybody wants to hear what I'm about to say, but I say listen to the data, right? One of the really interesting things that's coming off the kind of factory floor now is this ability to kind of test and iterate and create feedback loops. And we had teased this out a little bit in our preparation for this discussion, but machine learning in particular is starting to catch up and accelerate into a way where you can start analyzing what's being shown in a video, marrying that with performance information, and then tying that feedback loop back into the production circuit. So that way you say, well, if the consumer saw it was 2 people, it was shot outdoors, the sentiment was positive, and it performed well on Facebook, performed marginally well on Snap, et cetera, you can carry that data forward in a really interesting way into the next iteration and the following iteration and the following iteration. What excites me about that is, there's this conflict between working capital and non-working capital in any creative apparatus, right? Which is, how much time do we spend thinking about it versus how much time do we spend actually channeling it and seeing return from it? And if we can use some data and intelligence just to curtail that non-working capital piece just a little bit by showing up with a data-driven idea about, well, what should we consider in the concepting phase? That actually could save the company, whatever company and what we're talking about here, lots and lots of capital.
I mean, I don't think I've really thought about this concept. We're getting ready to wrap up here, but like AI is making some pretty big steps right now. Like I've seen some amazing stuff both on books written by AI, images, video, et cetera. But I hadn't thought through AI kind of queuing up creative teams to where it's giving you some templates, some options that have performed well, and you can run with that. I think that's really fascinating. And I know you have a ton of AI built on your back end, and it's been really exciting to watch Mountain and all the companies do what they're doing so far. So excited to where you go next. What what can we leave the people with? What else would you like them to know about QuickFrame?
Well, what I love about where we are now as a business is this is a traditional backward integration, right? So we started with Mountain, which is an OTT CTV buying platform, very accessible, very cool. And the problem they were trying to solve is supply chain, right? They just couldn't, their customers weren't getting creative assets fast enough to really take advantage of the platform and the manner and the speed and with the agility that they really envisaged. So kind of swimming upstream into a larger creative service offering that really helps, I think, shore up some of that delay, that inherent delay that is the, hey, but I want to show it, the consumers are ready for it, but we're just not there yet. And then when you sprinkle on the kind of the fairy dust that is the Ryan Reynolds concepting, which is, you know, all right, well, what idea are we starting with? What concept are we starting with? Is it creative enough? Does it ring the right bell? Does it hit the tuning fork? What have you? That marriage of concepting to creative production at scale to distribution is super interesting. So I think stay tuned for what Mountain is doing next, and maybe next year we'll have an update next time we sit down.
I love it. Thank you so much, Joe. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.